Joining us now is Republican Senator John Kennedy. He is on the committee questioning Barr. And Senator, in some ways, you had the most interesting questions to the former Attorney General on the subject of the report itself. Do you know, can you explain to me exactly at this point your understanding of what the American people will see?
I'll try. First, let me say I was proud of our committee yesterday. I thought everybody did a good job. I think if you gave everybody truth serum, they would tell you that Mr. Barr did a good job yesterday. That doesn't mean everybody will vote for him. The most interesting part of it, maybe disturbing part of it to me, it's not Mr. Barr's fault, and I've been afraid of this, is that whether the report will be made public is very uncertain. And I've been worried about this because Justice, or FBI as well, has a longstanding rule that they don't issue reports based on investigations. They let the indictments, if any, speak for themselves. That's one of the reasons that former Director Comey was criticized by some, is because he called a press conference. And what I heard Mr. Barr say yesterday, he hasn't talked with Mr. Rosenstein or with Mr. Mueller, but his understanding is the Justice and FBI rules say that Mr. Mueller will make a report to Mr. Barr, and Mr. Barr will then make some kind of report to Congress. But he was even uncertain on that, and he said that's one of the first things I'm going to look into. I think it's really important that this report be made public. People are smart enough to figure it out, and they've heard so much about it, and they've listened to all the spin on both sides. This is an unusual circumstance, and the American people need to see this report.
So just to be clear, the idea that he will provide a filtered report, not really good enough for you?
Well, I would rather have the original report. I don't know how, I don't know whether it's a statute. Mr. Barr was unclear on that. I think he doesn't really know. But I don't know whether it's a statute or a protocol or a rule. But to me, this is an unusual circumstance. And I think Mr. Mueller ought to write his report knowing that it's going to be released to the American people, and then everybody can make up their own mind.
So yesterday, you bucked Republican Senate leadership and the will of the administration, and you voted to proceed on a bill that would keep sanctions in place on companies owned by a Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska. Why?
I think Mr. Deripaska is a gangster. I think what he does to the Russian people every day is an abomination. I want to give Secretary Mnuchin credit. He worked very hard on this rule, and he truly believes that Mr. Deripaska no longer has control of this company. But Mr. Deripaska still is a shareholder in the company, with respect to which Secretary Mnuchin wants to remove sanctions. And these oligarchs in Russia control companies different than others. They don't necessarily have to have all the stock to control the company. And I just think it's a close case, and I can't in good conscience vote to lift sanctions on Deripaska.
What message does it send that the administration wants to ease some sanctions on someone you just called a gangster?
Well, I think Secretary Mnuchin honestly believes, and he may be right, that he has negotiated a deal where the oligarch has to give up control of the company. And he may be right. And I'm not knocking Steve. I think he worked hard on this. But, you know, this is a close case, and tie goes to the runner, if you will. And I just, out of an abundance of caution, I said, this guy's a bad news. He's a tyrant, he's a pirate, he's a gangster. And he's hurting the Russian people every day, and he's trying to hurt America. And we got him down. I said, let's choke him. I'm not going to let him up.
So if I can shift gears here for a second, do you know what the White House strategy is to end the government shutdown?
No, but I was just talking to Senator Warner. I don't think there is a strategy by either President Trump or Mrs. Pelosi. I hitched a ride back from New Orleans to D.C. with the president on Monday. Talked with him, I don't know, an hour or so. I don't think he's budging. I don't think Mrs. Pelosi's budging. Here's what I wish they'd do, and I bet we could clear this up in 2 days. If Mrs. Pelosi will appoint someone in whom she has confidence, the president will appoint someone in whom he has confidence, and say, go off and give me a global plan to secure the border. I can tell you what that plan would, they would come back if they were in good faith and say, okay, here's what we need. We need to beef up our security at the ports. We need more border agents. We need technology. We need drones. We need more detention beds. And we need, in certain places, a wall. And then these two people could say, Mr. President, Madam Speaker, here you're both getting what you want. We got to get government back open. Everybody go to their corners and let's swallow our pride and agree that to try this. I think we could wrap it up pretty fast, but I just think they're both so dug in. I haven't spoken to the Speaker, for whom I have great respect, but I've spoken to the President.
Yeah.
And he is resolute on this.
I do have to ask, given that he said he would own this shutdown now a month ago, do you think it would be incumbent on him to have a strategy to end it?
Well, I think they both ought to have a strategy. And I think that the president is not going to agree to any sort of deal without a border wall. And it looks to me like Speaker Pelosi is not going to agree to any deal with a border wall. And they're not even talking, which tells me they're probably too close to the fight. And if she would appoint someone in whom she has confidence and he would do the same, I think they could work it out in 2 or 3 days.
What's your message to the American people now? Because we learned from the White House team of economists that it's having twice as much of an impact on the economy. It's twice as bad for the economy that they originally thought. Some 800,000 people aren't getting paid. The Coast Guard commandant's telling his people this is the first time that its members have never received paychecks. You know, what do you tell them about how government's doing its job?
Well, my message to the American people is nobody wants to shut down. I don't know a single person up here, not someone who's in good faith and someone who's not drunk on certainty and virtue, who thinks that we ought to have a shutdown. Everybody wants to open it back up. But border security is important. And for whatever reason, the two negotiators here are the president and Mrs. Pelosi, and they're not going to reach an agreement anytime soon, if at all. So you got to go to Plan B. And there is a way to get the government open, but they're both going to have to give. And right now, neither one of them is willing to give an inch. And maybe they ought to just step aside and let two other people take a run at it.
So we have a Kennedy plan now on the table. We'll see if either side takes it up. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, pleasure having you on with us. Thanks so much.